There we go. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the inaugural edition of Licensed Stag Conversations. I'm very excited to introduce you all to Peg Serena. Peg and I have only recently been introduced. We just decided that it's been under 6 months that we've known each other. But in that time, we very quickly engaged in many wonderful conversations around anomalous experiences and art. While Peg has a very prestigious professional career, today we are going to be speaking specifically about her beautiful and deeply meaningful personal work. I think you're going to find Peg's work, outlook, and how she expresses these things through her paintings and drawings to be as riveting as I do. Uh, Please feel free to write questions in the chat, and then after Peg's presentation, we'll turn off the recording, and then we can have a more general discussion amongst the group. So it is with great humility and a deep honor that I welcome Peg Serena.
Thank you, Justin. Hi, everybody. So nice to see everybody. This process of preparing for this talk has really helped me because I am such a chaotic artist. My process is just all over the place. My style is all over the place. And I literally never feel like I'm finishing anything. So it's been really nice to have to prepare for this. And because trying to figure out like where the phenomenon enters and where it's not there and how that timeline has happened. Because of course, like I had some of you guys have been part of the conversations where I've talked about kind of like my flip experience or my more recent sort of big experience with the phenomenon where it like really pierced through and blew my mind back in 2023. But in looking at my art, there was a real buildup, like a real pressure buildup kind of to that moment, which I can see now. And I kind of feel like the more I accept myself as an experiencer, the more it's more easily comes through the art. Because even when I was prepping for this and I have to put dates to the art. And then I'm like, oh, this one was 2026. So this one was 2026. This one was 2026. And it's been kind of amazing for me to see like how the clarity is sort of coming with that acceptance and just how it's like becoming just part of the way I live this sort of like conversation with the phenomenon, if that makes sense. So maybe I'll just show some artwork. Does that sound good? I'll share. I made a slide presentation, so bear with me here. And I'll kind of talk through, as you guys know, like all these conversations about the phenomenon and our personal experience, like it's always such a long. So I'm a housewife now. I don't really want to sit around like only looking after babies and cleaning my house. So I just full on went into teaching myself how to paint. I knew how to draw, but so these are oil pastel. And for some reason, I was feeling all this pressure just to like, I couldn't explain it either. Like this cattle just kept coming through. It was like these bulls just kept coming through and they all had to be like brightly colored, not look like real cattle. Like, I mean, they look like real cattle, but the colors represented. And I knew that they were, you can see they're all in close. They're all staring at the viewer. And I knew they all had a message. They all were like trying to tell me something. And I just couldn't figure it out. And when people would ask with all the cows, because, people I used to work with are artists and stuff, and they'd be like, what's up with all these cows? I just like laugh it off. I'd be like, oh, I don't know. Like, it's just, and I also tried to make up reasons, like I was like, well, they're strong and these are really crazy times. They're strong, massive. Like I was just trying to figure it out. Then in 2020, this goat started coming through, and I just like had to paint this goat. And this word beacon kept coming through. Beacon, beacon, goat, goat. And, people are like, what's up with the goat? Like, there's nothing, no reason. And it's funny because even in this one that I did digitally, you can even see there's some words around it. And I would never show that to anybody. Like it says beacon. There's even like, I've done in layers something that says message, and this goat was pushing us, or me, to move, to get out of the States, move back to Canada where I'm from. And it was such a pressure. And finally, I was able to convince my husband, because we basically had to drop everything, like just drop everything and leave with no plan, which is kind of insane. But finally, he was like, yep, during the middle of COVID, when all the kids were out of school, finally, I was like, we got to go. And we went. And at the time, I actually need to ask Dean, my husband, if I mentioned the goat at the time. I probably didn't, like, there's this goat. He's telling me we got to go. And the weird thing is I actually kept drawing the goat after we got there. So, and it's weird. You can see how repeated it is, right? Like, it's just crazy. I probably have more drawings of this goat, but yeah. And then there is the captain. And this was a commission. A friend of mine, and it's funny, I didn't realize until I prepared for this talk. It was in talking to Justin how relevant I realized this captain is. So friends of mine bought a new house and they were, like renovating it. And they just decided they wanted the grizzly sea captain. And I started painting. Yeah, I was taking all different types of reference and painting this guy. My sister said to me, that looks so much like our grandpa. She really wanted a copy of it when I was done because it reminded her a lot of my grandpa. And I realized when I was painting it, it reminded me of him too. Like I knew I was just trying to like bring his essence through it. And to me, it looks like him, except for my grandpa doesn't have a beard. He smoked that pipe. Weirdly, now I smoke that pipe. That's a whole story in itself. But yeah, so that becomes relevant, strangely. Actually, I think it was Justin who was like, yeah, I think that is relevant. So weirdly, not my style of artwork. And I call it the night before because and this all has to do with my like big experience that happened in 2023, which some of you got this before, but I'll get into it just because it's such a huge part of like, well, obviously you guys know like your whole life changes. So my aunt was dying at the time. And my son, who was little at the time, he was like 6, was asking me, what happens when you die? And I just said, I don't know. There's a lot of different cultures that think so in this. So maybe we should look at that stuff and see what we think. And he thought that was a good idea. And this is the funny part. And these things are so weird the way they happen. So this is the silly part. A few days later, I'm flipping through Netflix and I see this show, Life After Death with Tyler Henry. I didn't know who Tyler Henry was. So I started watching it. And at first I'm thinking, oh, maybe I can watch this with my kids. Like maybe it'll, no, that's not going to happen. But I start watching it and, he's like this celebrity medium. Immediately I'm hooked. I'm like, this is amazing. Some people have their trash TV that they binge. This was mine. I was like, I love this. And so everybody would go to sleep at night and I would just watch episode after episode. And like part of it too, I was getting really bored with my art. Like I didn't know what I was doing. Like I was at the time, because we'd left, I was no longer I work in stop motion animators. but we left the States. So I was working in like just on the computer, and I was working Care Bears season 2, which was really fun and cute, but it was not really. So I was just bored. And so I was like, maybe, I'm going to draw while I watch this Tyler Henry show. And one night, this anatomy thing came through that I was like, I don't know what the hell that is. And it was that night that I said, I'm going to open myself up to this. I remember specifically saying that. And then this drawing came through. And then I finished it. I posted it to Instagram and I went to sleep. And in the morning, my oldest friend wrote me saying, what the hell is that drawing? Like, that's my whole life right now. And, I kind of laughed. I was like, oh, I ESP'd you. She said she was wearing heart monitor at the time. And her husband, it's like he has this issue with his brain, like his brain fluid, the way his skull fits together can at times weirdly leak out. And he was going through an episode of this, and it causes like extreme tiredness and kind of like having chronic fatigue. And she's like, why did you draw this? I was like, I have no idea why I drew that. It doesn't look anything like anything I've drawn before. So I just laughed. I was like, oh, I ESP'd you. This is so funny. And we had a good chat, whatever. And so I thought, ooh, I'm going to get up. I'm going to do this again tonight. So that night, I sat again with my new friend, Tyler Henry. And I had my iPad out and I was drawing. And I wish I knew what I was drawing at the time. I don't think I saved it, weirdly. But, and some of you have heard this story before, but all of a sudden I started feeling like deeply sad and remorseful, to the extent where I was like, I didn't know where it was coming from. But I could feel the intensity of it. And I had to like stop the TV just to be like, what is this? Like what's happening? And everyone else was asleep in the house and it was night. And as I was walking to the kitchen to get some cereal, because that's what you do when you're feeling sad, I heard the voice. And the voice was audible, like outside of me. And it sounded like it was coming kind of like through a frequency, like pushing through almost like a radio station, like coming in and out. And it was my grandfather, the one that I had sort of been painting. And he said, he was from England, and he said, "Pop it," which is what he called me when I was little. And all this remorse and all this sadness he had, I knew it was from, it's funny how you just know when you have these experiences. I had seen his racism when I was a teenager, and it shocked me. I had never seen it before, and I'd never heard anyone say things like that. And I jumped, like I was watching Oprah Winfrey with my sister, and he walked up behind us and he said something really racist about Oprah. And I just was shocked. I jumped up and yelled at him. I called him a racist, and I basically never wanted to talk to him again. And he went back to England, and the next time I saw him in England, he sort of had dementia, and we never really we never really talked about it. Which over the years, he died like more than 20 years ago. He's a different generation. I didn't hold it against him, really. I just wish that we had more time together, I guess, to talk about it, right? So back to that moment, I knew what this feeling was about, and he had remorse. And then he said, that was just that one little life. And again, I suddenly knew that he was trying to tell me that he'd had a lot of lives, like a lot of lives. and that this was just that one where that I knew him as this person and he kind of got it wrong. And I was trying to say to him, like, it's okay. Like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And then I realized I had to forgive him. And so I did. I said, I totally forgive you. And all that sadness and everything disappeared. And that voice that I heard outside of me went into my head. And he told me he was waiting for my aunt. And that was so outside of my frame of like belief at that time. I was like, what are we just standing around looking at us? Like, what do you, I didn't get it. So I was like, stop this, stop. And the crazy thing, obviously, once that experience was over, I couldn't stop thinking about it, right? I'm obsessed. It's taken over my whole life in a beautiful, beautiful way. But it's a process, right? Like it's a process of understanding. And I'm now realizing through that it's like always coming out in my art. And so something I was saying to Justin earlier is that in preparing for this talk, this painting, and I've got up there now, I painted this in 2017, and I knew that at the time, and you can see the bulls in the background. So I have two easels there, and I'm trying to I'm painting, and for some reason I'm obsessed with painting this. And I was trying to paint souls. And at one point I was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, I don't really believe in this stuff. Like, why am I painting this? And I painted over it, both of them, like with a cow, like I had to just go back that I could at least understand as a thing. And it's so weird because I haven't seen these paintings since yesterday. I found, at least since I painted them. And I was like, wow, if I was going to try and paint my grandparents, who I am in contact with now, it would look something like this, I mean, maybe a little differently just because I hope I'm a better painter now, but you can even see how I had done like individual souls, I don't know if it makes sense to you, but I was just kind of blew my mind yesterday when I thought, wow, that's so looks like the beings that I'm in touch with now. And then since then, I've been trying to figure it out, like, how do I get this down? And my son thinks that this is terrifying. This painting is terrifying. And I'm like, Justin and I were just talking about this. I'm like, what? It's so beautiful. This is my grandfather. He's trying to talk to me. And the other thing that I experienced a lot is hands. Like, it feels like if I'm having trouble or I'm reaching out, I like feel hands holding my hand coming down. Sounds crazy. I don't know if I've ever said that out loud before, but this other drawing here is I'm just trying to grasp like what's going on. And so for a bunch of years, like I said, my process is really chaotic. Sometimes I try to do, it's like I was trying to do other stuff. So I was trying to do portraits. I was trying to like express emotions, but I also at the same time was just trying to process experience. And then I finally this year, and I really think it's been through meeting other experiencers and through, joining a group where we could just sit and talk to each other. And it's been this really wonderful process of acceptance and of, like, I see it now as a conversation with the phenomenon, or even with like the divine, it's an ongoing daily conversation, and you get these invitations. I feel like they're almost constant, or certainly daily, that you either pick them up, you either engage the conversation, or you're blocking yourself, or sometimes we don't have time, whatever. But I really feel like I blocked myself for most of my life, right? And which is weird because and I'm not going to go over this experience right now because it doesn't really relate to the art, but I had a total flip with a phenomenon in the 90s this beautiful out of body experience that I'm like, how did I? And then I just was like, for 20 years, and I'm like, wow, I must have just been like, I went deep into it at the time, but then I think that life goes on, right? And I just blocked it again. I needed to have a career. I needed to like focus on serious things. And now I'm like all for I'm realizing how once you start accepting those invitations, it's just a really beautiful kind of natural process happens. So anyway, these drawings, this time when I was feeling stuck, I decided to do more automatic drawings. And I did these with my eyes closed. I would just sit there with my pencil, and then I would open my eyes basically to make sure my pencil was still like on the paper, and then close them again and draw, open, close. And I tried to keep them mainly closed. And I find that I was actually really amazed at what happens when you do this kind of process. I try to do it with painting, doesn't work as well. I think because the paint gets muddy really fast, but doing it with the drawings has been really cool. And I've started actually just recently, like very recently, burning some herbs in the morning and doing this process, which has been really kind of interesting, but I'll show some more. So this year, I feel like something's happening where, like I said, the more that I accept this process, the more that I have a bit of clarity on the painting. So this one is called New Dawn. And when I was painting it, my intention was dusk or dawn. And it was that the world is insane, obviously, and we're either ending or we're beginning again. And the bull is a warning of the end, and the white raven, is bringing in the new beginning. And I felt like as I was painting, I basically had to decide for myself, like, is it dusk or dawn, or is it both? And I just decided, and for me, I can decide that it's dawn. And so that's why I decided to call it New Dawn. And that's what that painting is all about. This one is called Falling. It's funny and when I do these, I don't actually start with some of them I start with a plan, and some of them I don't. This one I didn't have a plan with this. Yeah, I got a lot of responses on this. I just post it, and just curious, what resonates with people and what doesn't. And again, like sometimes I feel like I'm like reflecting on the world. Sometimes I feel like I'm reflecting on myself. Sometimes there's like a combination of like warnings and stuff like that. For me, I have ideas about what this painting's about. I don't know if I should get into it right now, but someone that we know fell recently, and I painted this right when that was happening. So maybe we can talk about it more in the questions. But yeah. This one's Follow. And I feel like those horns are goat horns because of my goat. And this is to me, is an invitation. This is one of the invitations. And the owl, obviously, is always often represented in our experiences or related to our experiences. But I just felt like I was trying to represent an invitation from the divine or from the phenomenon that was like showing up and kind of beckoning, to follow, which is why I call it Follow, obviously. This one came out of nowhere. And I actually, when I first, I posted this, and actually it's through Justin that I started being able to call it what I actually thought when I was painting it, that it's the fae, or my fun kind of whatever came through me. I knew when I was painting it that it was like forest people, fae, that kind of thing. But when I looked back at what I posted, I couldn't even call it that, right? Like I called it some storybook thing coming through. And I am realizing now that, wow, it's all this process of acceptance and being willing to, just be my true self at this time. Like this is what I believe. This is what's happening. True to me. And just, I don't need to care what anybody else thinks. So yeah, Faye. And yeah, Justin, when you really loved this, I was like, okay, so I can, yeah. Anyway, that was like a nice confirmation, And then this portal, I did a quick sketch of this before I did it. And in reflecting on it, it just happened really fast. But again, I feel like, the portal is just so, to me, and probably to with either an invitation, a message, or sometimes support, and I mean, I've never seen an orb. I'd like to. I mean, but I included them here because I think it's just one of those things that's part of the way the phenomenon, can present itself as an interaction with us, right? And and also the being that's coming through. So in terms of who that is, it's not a specific person really. It's just the phenomenon itself. It's one representation of what it could be. So wait, that's the end of what I have prepped to show. But yeah.
Lovely, lovely. Thank you so much, Peg. And we'll open this up in just a minute to everybody else. I'll turn off the recording then. But so much of what you just shared, it just encapsulates why I wanted to continue doing these talks and open them up a little bit, because it's just incredible that you've mentioned to me a few times how going through this process of looking at all of this has helped you to see some of your own kind of experience, right? And work through that. And I think you just articulated that very well for us too. Just that give and take between the work and then yours, and kind of seeing back and forth. And perhaps in some ways, the one that gave me the most chills this time, because your work has given me chills before, but this time was the painting that you did in 2017 that you ended up painting over, right? And one of my mentors has said to me this line about that you can change the past. And it took me a long time to figure out what he meant by that. And I have my own, understanding of what that means. But, I think that painting to me kind of articulated it to a certain degree where, you can discover something else, or that you were even talking about having, somewhat of an awakening maybe 20 years ago, and then now reflecting on it again and maybe not have been ready for it, or, maybe have been involved with other things so that you weren't as able to dedicate as much of your attention to that. And it's just so lovely to hear you articulate that and walk us through your process. And as has been shared in the chat, you're absolutely gorgeous work. As someone just said, capital MORE with 4 or 5 exclamation points.
Oh my God, that's so nice.
Wow. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I always feel like I work with a lot of really beautiful artists, right? And so it's such a struggle, or it has been such a struggle, because I'm like teaching myself how to paint and I don't have someone, which made me laugh because you're obviously have been an art professor, right? So like, you're like, put this presentation together, and you're like, hand it into me. And I was like, great, finally.
It wasn't quite that stern, was it? It wasn't.
Yeah. Now, I don't know. Maybe I just needed like a deadline or something. But yeah, I feel really, and also, like many of us, that I have some. I'm sure I have, some learning disorders. I have ADHD. I got all kinds of like obsessive compulsive disorder. Like there's a lot going on, right? So to try and have a schedule of any kind or get myself to paint when it would be useful and helpful is just really hard. So this has just been great to like have some structure.
Yes, I like to say
Yeah.
that artists need deadlines, otherwise we'll never get anything done. Like that's just our nature.
Anything done.
Because
Well,
everything's
and
always over.
yeah, the other thing is like a lot of the time what I paint is just like a mess. Or like I paint and I'm like, oh, and then I really screw it up. And I'm like, there we go again. So I mean, you know, I
Yeah,
can show like some paintings that worked.
one thing I thought that was really interesting, you told me this and you just alluded to it, was on Peg's Instagram, which I would recommend everybody follows because she puts a lot of her work there. But you illuminated to me what you just said, which is that you will post things in progress, which many artists don't do. Most artists will show finished work. Yeah.
It's really important to me. I'm very against perfection, like so hardcore against it. That like image of perfection, that, because like that I like got it all together and my process is like this and here's my perfect studio. And I just am like, come on, this a disaster. Sometimes it works, but like I'm just really trying to work my way through. And I got to say, like I said, um, the more conversations I have with other experiencers and stuff, and this whole process of acceptance, it just seems to, it's weird because like I had that experience with my grandfather and it's not like he went away, like I had some, like many of us, you have that flip and something's cracked open. And then, so crazy stuff keeps happening. However, I found over the past year that it's more subtle and however, at the same time, it's almost like I'm getting better at listening or knowing what the cues are or something, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of people could probably relate to that. So, well, listen, I would love to open this up because we already have a few hands up. So I'm going to go ahead and end the recording. But thank you again, Peg, for doing this portion. This has been Lights in the Sky Conversations. I'm your host, Justin James Reed. Deep gratitude to S. Smock for generously allowing me to use his beautiful song Beetroot for the intro and outro music. You will find a link to all of his compositions in the show notes. Lights in the Sky is a fine art gallery in Richmond, Virginia. For and by experiencers of anomalous phenomena.